that spoke today to show that you are not alone and you will not stay alone, because we understand the problems that you are facing too. The armed conflict that has been raging in the east of the country continues to take lives and homes. It also makes circumstances for the Ukrainian government to put the development plans in action very difficult, as we said today. Additionally, a part of the country has been annexed by another country. For us, this is clearly a violation of international law and order, and we will continue to condemn this action while supporting territorial integrity of Ukraine. As all the speakers before me have said, the expectation that the Minsk agreement are fully implemented is ever present. For the people of eastern Ukraine, a lasting ceasefire and peace are needed to be able to return to their homes and to their lives. Peace is also needed in order to proceed with the necessary reforms. In addition, the Minsk agreement contains a number of political provisions that will acquire difficult compromise solutions and strong political will of all sides and all actors that can influence the process. We have to be honest here and state that the conflict and aggression are not the only reason for the difficult position of Ukraine. Insufficient reforms in the past, inefficient state structure and democratic institutions have played a significant role. Corruption is at the top of the systemic problem. Therefore, it is important that officials and the politicians choose not to engage in the corrupt practices, what they clearly said. But this first step is not enough. The mechanism for corruption in institutions need to be rooted out in legislation and more in practice. Ladies and gentlemen, I was listening very carefully the statements of the country leaders whose efforts we have been following throughout the last year. I'm heartened by the intentions and plans for the future and support the ambitious but necessary reforms. Wide political support, continuous dialogue, and good coordination of efforts will be required from them to succeed, and of course, support from us to be successful. The conflict in the East cannot and should not stop the pace of the reforms. Of course, this is easier said than done. Much of the country's budget will continue to go to the conflict and its afterwards. But Ukraine has now a unique opportunity to use what is at its disposal: the international attention and international support that we all also shown here today. Slovenia stands ready to contribute its knowledge in the process awaiting Ukraine. As a minister responsible for public administration, I firmly believe that efficient and strong public administration is a vital subsystem of society that contributes to the state's development, competitiveness of the business environment, and social welfare. Due to our effective and modern approaches and experience, we can contribute to enhancing the capacity of the public administration of Ukraine, because effective public service reform is possible with modern human resource management, IT system, transparent public procurement, reduction of regulatory burdens for citizens and businesses, and with successful fight against corruption. As a country that had to go through transition, that needed to build institutions from the scratch, that had to go through challenging reform of its own development, but also its quest to join the European Union, Slovenia has experts and expertise that can provide valuable input, because we already passed this path. Slovenian government has also helped to its ability with humanitarian relief in the region of Donetsk and Luhansk, Also Ukrainian soldiers have been rehabilitated in Slovenian University Rehabilitation Center, and our particular concern goes to children. More than 1.5 billion of them are reportedly affected by the conflict in Ukraine. We are happy to help a small number of them regain some of their childhood hopes. We have a well-established program of psychological rehabilitation on the Slovenian coast, and moreover, our highly specialized institutions are offered here to be in help of children with hearing and visual disabilities. Being well aware of danger and risk that the landmines represents in the parts of the country, we are very pleased to know that Ukrainian authorities and Slovenian institutes ITF Enhancing Human Security signed already Memorandum of Understanding to cooperate. ITF intends to conduct a program with three important components. First, removal of landmines and explosives. Second is school and community-based risk education programs. And third, rehabilitation of mine victims. The ITF has been very successful in conducting these activities after the wars in Balkans, and it's ready to use its experience wider, also in areas affected in conflict in the Ukraine. We continue to support the invaluable work of OSCE, special monitoring mission that needs safe access to all areas it covers with its mandate. We are pleased that they and the trilateral contact group are accepted by all sides and impartial monitors and negotiators who can help the governmental efforts. Also, we owe thanks to other international agencies and numerous non-governmental actors who help those in drastic humanitarian situations. Ladies and gentlemen, let me at the end assure you that it is in the interest of us all to see Ukraine develop in a modern state based on democratic values. For that goal, we are offering our assistance in the process that will need to be based on your own strength, on your own dedicated, continuous engagement, which we will support you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Our next panelist, Deputy Prime Minister of Economic Affairs of Macedonia, Vladimir Peševski. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, dear representatives of the European Commission, dear Prime Minister, my colleagues panelists, let me start off by extending strong support by Macedonian people, by Macedonian government to Ukraine, to Ukrainian government and to Ukrainian people. We understand what you're going through very, very well. Macedonia itself has suffered a similar crisis in 2001, not so long ago, where there was an internal conflict in the country which was of relatively large scale. I was personally affected by it. I was one of those internally displaced persons. At that time I was 31, recently married with 6-month-old baby, my first baby, and I had to leave my home. I understand very well how you feel, and again, my support is especially with these people. They question themselves every day what the future holds for me, what the future holds for us. But I will speak what happened in Macedonia and how we managed to cope with the crisis. In this process, I will give you my opinion, again, what you need to do. I keep hearing the whole morning, and it's understandable that Ukraine is pledging for international support. International support is very important, especially in the area of diplomacy. We were doing the same thing in 2001. But at the end, it's up on Ukrainian people. International support is welcome. You should insist on it, but view it as a bonus. You have to do it yourself. And again, second advice, the sooner the better. In 2001, again, there are some similarities with Ukraine. The crisis started at the end of 2000, and somewhere in April 2001, the first discussions emerged about the changes in our constitution. The leaders, politicians at that time were reluctant to make any changes, thinking that the crisis will be over soon. But unfortunately, the crisis escalated. So when new negotiations started in September, just 6 months later, massive changes were made to the constitution. Much more concessions were given, lives were lost, the economy was ruined. So time is important. So these are the two things that I can extract from our personal experience. When the crisis was over, due to my background in economy, I was head of a small private equity firm in the country. I became advisor to the President Boris Rajkovsky on some policies, how to overcome and how to cope with the post-crisis economic effects. But again, seeing this firsthand, I understand what you're going through, and you have my strongest support. Now, fast forward for 15 years, where Macedonia is today. Again, for those of you that don't know, Macedonia is a small country, 2 million people, and again, 15 years after the crisis, I can say that we're proud of the results that we have achieved. Several governments have changed. In the meantime, I traveled around the world to work for other international institutions, and then I joined the government in 2009 at the current position, Deputy Prime Minister for Economic Affairs. And again, now we are talking, or you are talking about reforms. This is another thing that we've been going through in the last 6-7 years with the current government. Macedonia managed to improve its business climate by far most of all European countries. In 2007, when we started with the reforms, Macedonia was ranked by World Bank on 96th place in terms of its business climate. Now we're ranked on 30th place, which is better than more than half of the countries members of European Union. The percent of investment as a composition of GDP more than tripled. Exports tripled. We reduced unemployment by 10%. We increased the number of tourists by 200%. And over, it doesn't matter in which area you look at, the improvements that we have achieved over the last, especially 5-6 years with the current government, are tremendous. The last 2 years we have we are among the top 3 countries in Europe in terms of economic growth of GDP. So if you want to do it, if you know how to do it, it's doable, even for a small country. But again, few words of advice, maybe for the more for the Prime Minister and for the leaders. All these reforms have to be championed by the President and the Prime Minister himself. If this is something delegated to some committee, to some other groups, progress will be very, very, very slow. Other thing is rely on your home experts. Macedonia has a long history of hiring or bringing experts from abroad that were giving advice, what reforms are good, what reforms are bad. These advices are valuable. Don't neglect them. But at the end, the best proposals will come from you, from your own people, because ultimately they have vested interest. International experts will come and go. For them, it's just another assignment. For you, it's your future. And again, this has been our experience. In many areas, the top leading financial institutions of the world were skeptical about the things that we were doing. When we were reducing taxes, when we were reducing some administrative procedures to bare bones, they were saying it will not work. It worked. It worked very well. Many of them are copying what we were doing on a small scale in Macedonia in much bigger countries. But again, the thing is, this was done relying on domestic experts. And finally, again, it has to be done with passion and hard work. 80-hour working week, it's a minimum for the top 100 people in the government. Talking is not enough. You have to put lots of hard work in a very, very long period of time. At the end, believe me, the results will come. And again, I don't want to spend too much of your time, but I will end with the way I started. I reaffirm the support that Macedonian people are giving to and providing to Ukraine and Ukrainian people. We're willing to share all the experience that we have accumulated over the last years. Again, many improvements in many areas, probably more than any other country in the East European bloc or former bloc. But again, this was based on the principle that just explained. I wish you all well. I wish Ukrainian people well, and God be with us all the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pashevsky. It's very powerful that you draw all this experience from your personal experience and show us and share your personal experience with us. So our next panelist is Deputy Prime Minister for Investment of Slovakia, Mr. Lubomir Vazhny. Very Vazhny. Welcome.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to express my gratitude that I can be part of this important and in many ways exceptional event. This meeting confirms that we all together shape up a community of countries and experts who are ready to actively participate and assist and help out with the reform process in Ukraine. I wouldn't say anything new if I state that Slovakia considers Ukraine a close and important partner, vital for the stability of the entire region and the whole European continent. We have close and in many ways matching political and economic interests, which have much to do with stability of our countries. Let me reiterate that Slovakia, by its actions, has been consistently supporting Ukraine on the path to come closer to the EU, to politically associate and economically integrate with the EU. We have been expressing our support to Ukraine in all the respective international fora, particularly in the EU, including on the highest levels. Our vital interest in unambiguous. It is stabilization of situation in Ukraine, which will enable smooth implementation and fulfilling of Ukrainian European ambitions. A major challenge for Ukraine is to create the environment needed for stabilization of the economy, starting up its growth and ensure the influx of new foreign investment. Only well-governed, reformed and stable and secure country can ensure higher standards of living and stable living conditions for its own citizens. Only the reforms are the right way to modernize the country at its convergence with EU standards. I would like to emphasize and experience confidence that a political dialogue at the highest level between our countries will continue in the future. The proof of our excellent mutual relation in all spheres is enhanced by frequent bilateral contacts at respective levels, as well as by many business contacts between Slovak and Ukrainian partners. By continuing this trend, the recent official mission of the Slovak Prime Minister to Kiev will be followed by the state visit of the President of Slovak Republic next month. We frankly wish to share with Ukraine our common vision of a prosperous European countries closely cooperating together and mutually respecting each other. Slovakia has always been ready to share its integration experience with Ukraine. Slovakia was in a similar situation. We have our own expertise, skills, knowledge, experience, and probably most importantly, the courage. We have been supporting unity, sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine. We welcome the wish of Ukraine to peacefully resolve the conflict in the Donbas region based on the Minsk agreements. Reforms and peace resolution process should be two parallel processes. The future of Ukraine is in your hands. We can and we will help you, however, concrete decisions followed by concrete actions which are challenging in many aspects should be done by Ukrainian authorities. I am glad that day we heard promising statement of our Ukrainian friends of the readiness to undergo respective reforms which will transform Ukraine into a modern European country. It is clear that Ukraine cannot live at the expense of foreign assistance. Ukraine is a rich country and we believe that it is ready to use its own potential. Therefore, we would like to see the outcomes of this conference in concrete steps to improve the investment climate and business environment in Ukraine. In future, we are ready to support concrete segments of mutual cooperation and invest in joint projects. It is our mutual interest that Ukraine succeed in its reform process. Let me wish Ukraine the very best success on its path to come closer to the EU. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vajny. Thank you for your support. Your country was critical for energy supplies for Ukraine, and thank you for your decisions. And next panelist is Deputy Prime Minister of Science, Research and Innovation of Czech Republic, Pavel Bělobrádek.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm last not least, I hope. So it isn't easy to have a speech out over my speakers before, so I try to say something new. What will be Ukraine tomorrow? This is what we can concern with here, the future. We know what the situation is and what the problems are today. And at this conference, we want to help in finding recipes to overcome today's realities. Maybe it's John Claude's pen, maybe. So, let me remember that clearly the main part of this job on the road toward a better future will fall to the Ukrainians themselves. Everything what you do, you can't, you haven't to do because of EU, because of USA, because of West. Everything what are you going to do, you have to do because of yourselves, because of Ukraine. I think it's very important. Clearly, the main part of these jobs, yes, it is. No one knows this better than President Petro Poroshenko and Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk. As a Czech citizen, feel strong moral obligation to help Ukraine on this difficult road. If for nothing else, it is because others helped us in the similar vein after 1989. But this is not only reason. Let me remember one man, one big name among many who built a strong bond between the histories of Ukraine and of my country. One strong and wise man lead the fight from here, from Kiev in 1917 for an independent, free and democratic Czechoslovakia. This man, his name was Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, and in 1918 he was elected the first president of our independent country, Czechoslovakia. And he is well known for this celebrated credo, fear not and steal not. And I think it's very important now today. And essentially I think this is what the people of Maidan also wanted. Same as Masaryk, who had to fight after Czechoslovak independence to keep the integrity of our new country with its borders, which many revisionists called artificial. It is now you who have to fight for unite and whole Ukraine. The EU's position and the position of the Czech government is unequivocal. Ukraine must remain free, peaceful and united as a one whole. We do not recognize the Russian annexion of Crimea, and neither we will recognize any attempts to tear away other parts of Ukraine's territory on any pretext. If we want to speak today about the future prosperity of Ukraine, the very first step must be stability. There was a question about the stability of Ukraine government. You know, I think that stability isn't everything, because we have to say that, like Masaryk said, democracy is a discussion. And we had parliament during fascist and during Nazis and communist time. It means we need discussion and we need free medias. We need journalists who have free of their words. It's a necessary condition to democracy. And this requires mainly peace as well as permanent guarantees of its security. The question is, how do we reach this goal? I share the opinion some as the great majority of European People's Party members and German Chancellor Angela Merkel that unfriendly realism, pursuit and application of sanctions against Russia will be more efficient than military escalation. At the same time, we must, however, make it clear that the Minsk agreement represents the last attempt at a diplomatic solution. And President Putin must be aware that should this attempt fail due to his own faults, and the USA and EU may be forced to re-evaluate their position regarding the strengthening of Ukraine's defense capability, including shipments to Ukraine of arms and other military assistance. Because the world thing would be to keep the aggressor thinking that the West will shirk solution involving this type of strength. I feel that this needed to be said. If we are here to speak about a prospering and safe Ukraine, we must a clear nation how to achieve such a state. Stability is a necessary condition, not, however, the sufficient one. Reforms must follow. I feel that needed to be said. If we are here to speak about prospering and safe Ukraine, we must have a clear notion. I did not come here to preach you what you should be doing. You know what needs to be done better than anyone else. And along with the EU, I must express my appreciation to that you have been driving reforms to limit corruption and bureaucracy and to improve working of the courts and public administration generally, just as you are taking many painful steps to achieve economic transformation. I am especially appreciative that the regulation of the small and mid-sized enterprises sector. The small firms are the salt of the economy. They are de facto a democratization tool because they form the counterweight to the concentration of property and power in the hands of new oligarchs. Czech Republic understands the problem that Ukraine is facing very well. We face similar problems, but not in such an excellent. We will be very glad to help Ukraine on its road to Europe, and we will share our experiences. After all, it was the Czech Republic which strongly promoted the Eastern Partnership that was based during the Czech presidency of the EU Council. Our aid earmarked to support reforms and implement the accession agreement, including quadrennial encompassing the free zone, exceeded €2 million last year. This year, we have allocated over €3 million to the same ends. Our priority for the last several years has been the reform of education system and support of independent media. Only educated, free and informed nation will succeed in fierce global competition today. I trust that Ukraine will soon become involved in the European research and development programs, and the cooperation between our universities will intensify further. It is worth mentioning that scientific exchanges between our countries and Ukraine have been working well since the 19th century until today. We appreciate that the current Ukrainian government facilitated participation in the European Union student exchange program Erasmus. The previous government swept this proposal aside several years ago. If you are successful in key reforms, economic growth may return as early as next year. I would also like to mention one other reform which cannot be helped from the outside much. The reforms lie in creating a real political nation. I understand that after what happened in eastern Ukraine and the nation, reconciliation will require plenty of goodwill from involved. Without such reconciliation, however, Ukraine cannot hope to achieve stability, nor can it hope to apply necessary reforms, and as a consequence, it won't prosper without achieving this inner peace. And Ukrainians alone are the ones who may bring about for reconciliation, regardless of nationality, of language, or residence in any parts of country. No foreigner can impose on you this process or tell you how to do it. And this stability can be secured and reforms in Ukraine successfully navigated, and this includes some constitutional and public reforms. Only then can we hope for a better future and prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that we heard a lot of words, but words are only words, and what is on the paper is only on paper. What is important is what we are going to do. It isn't necessary to have new laws. but it isn't all. We need to support you, and you are here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pavel Belobradek. One of our colleagues have to apologize. He has another commitment. So thank you so much. And 3 left. Let's talk about a future, European future for Ukraine. You all went through the process. How important, in your opinion, to have that European perspective for Ukraine set and done on the paper, in words and in agreements, to actually make reforms and reform the country? You probably first.
Well, I can give you our view on the matter. Macedonia is not a member of EU, but it's a candidate country for a very long period of time. We have a dispute over our name with our southern neighbor Greece, but nevertheless, if the reforms are done with the pure objective just to join European Union, I don't think that optimal results will be achieved. Whenever we are developing certain reforms, our ultimate goal or what we have in mind is interest of people. And this is how usually we test the reforms in the discussions with people or with the parties that would be affected by the reforms. Because European Union or joining European Union is not an objective on its own. Let's imagine just for a second that today Ukraine is admitted to European Union. If nothing changes in the lives of ordinary people, then it makes no sense. So what is important is to make changes that will affect people of real life of people and a real way of doing business for companies and improving the business climate for investors. Ultimately, this is what counts, and this is what will bring you results. And even for politicians, this is the best thing, because usually good things work hand in hand. We have many countries that have had governments that managed to join European Union and then they lost power in the next elections, because people assess that that was not enough. On the other hand, there are many governments, again, in Macedonia were winning 9 elections in a row, but the pace and direction of improvements is steady, and this is what people ultimately respect. So at the end, it's about real results.
Maybe you have, Czech Republic, you have a lot of experience.
I think that necessary and very important is the word reform, because in Czech Republic, because not reform could be very good thing and it could be very bad thing for people. It means for a lot of people in Czech Republic,
It can be painful.
any reforms are a rude word. It is very important to do reforms, but right reforms which clear independ on the trust of people, and the trust is very important word for reforms. Second is about situation in legislation. It means we have a law, but it isn't so much. It's only word on the paper. We need courts, policy. We need, when someone stole everything, to get a police, court, and jail. And it's very important to trust of people, to government, to policy, to administration. And I think it's the most important for successful reforms.
Rule of law. Yeah, your experience. How important it is to have European perspective?
Poznám to podľa seba a určite naši ukrajinskí priatelia sa toho už napočúvali za posledný rok strašne veľa a ešte sa toho napočúvajú strašne veľa ohľadne reforiem.
I have this from my own experience. I'm sure our Ukrainian friends have heard a lot of that over the past year or two. They will hear much more of that for the years to come. But here I am saying it again. We have been there where you are at now.
Problém reforiem je ten, že reformy sú síce pre záujmy ľudí, ale väčšinu reforiem ľudia tak nevnímajú.
The problem remains when governments are implementing reforms in countries. They are, at the end of the day, for the benefit of the people. However, the people do not always necessarily perceive the reforms as such.
Samozrejme, vidíme to z iných krajín, že napríklad severské štáty Európy majú reformy zavedené už dávno a funguje to tam lepšie ako tie krajiny v strede Európy.
We can see many different examples in many parts of just Europe, for instance, looking at Scandinavian countries. For example, they have had their reforms adopted a long time ago, and it seems to be working quite well. Other countries, specifically in the center, in the east of Europe, are still progressing in this regard.
Čiže máme exaktne preukázané, že reformy fungujú a treba ich aplikovať na verejnú správu.
So we can see good examples of varied levels of progress, but indeed we can say that reforms do work and they are worth implementing.
Problém, že z krátkodobého hľadiska si reformy alebo zavedenie reforiem si rozporujú s tým, alebo sú v rozpore s tým, že obyvatelia ich pociťujú väčšinou negatívne.
The problem with introducing any reforms is that initially, once reforms introduced, they are inevitably painful and citizens perceive them quite negatively as a result.
Napríklad je treba reformovať súdnictvo, antikorupčné záležitosti, vzdelávanie, ale aj konsolidáciu verejných financií, ktorá je dosť v rozpore s tým sociálnym rozmerom a životným štandardom ľudí.
For instance, a country needs to reform its judiciary, police force, for instance, the rule of law, education, health sector, all at once. However, all of that requires also, meanwhile, retaining a public finance consolidation and sticking within rules which negatively reflects on the social welfare.
Je to ale krátkodobé hľadisko, z dlhodobého hľadiska samozrejme obyvateľom každej krajiny pomôžu, lebo ich benefit je vysoký.
This is, however, only a short-term view because any reforms, if performed and implemented well, will at the end of the day benefit greatly the entire population.
Takže treba ich zavádzať, ale s citom, tak aby nemali drastický dopad na obyvateľov, na ťažko skúšaných obyvateľov vašej krajiny. Ďakujem.
So reforms need to be implemented and adopted, however, do so sensibly, if I may say so, to address Ukraine as a nation and take into account the pain Ukrainians have already experienced so far. Thank you.
Дякую, дякую. Thank you so much. We have one more statement actually. The Minister of Republic of Kazakhstan for Economic Integration would like to say a couple of words. The country just went through election. And so we would welcome Mrs. Janar Sadahmetova. Yeah.
Thank you. Distinguished members of the panel and participants of the conference, dear ladies and gentlemen, my country, Kazakhstan, is highly committed to further strengthening its political, economic, and trade relations with Ukraine. Ukraine is the fifth largest trading partner of Kazakhstan, and we both enjoy the bilateral free trade agreement as well as participate in the CIS-wide free trade agreement of 2011. As follow-up to the December visit of President Nazarbayev to Ukraine last December, and in close cooperation with the government of Ukraine, Kazakhstan provided this January humanitarian aid of 300 tons to Ukraine. Currently, we are working jointly with the government on the second humanitarian aid package to Ukraine. Kazakhstan is also committed to continue its support of the initiative aimed at ensuring the safety of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Earlier in 2011, Kazakhstan provided humanitarian aid for the amount of 2 million euros for construction of protective structures in Chernobyl. In continuation of this support, I am pleased to announce that the government of Kazakhstan has made recently a decision to provide financial aid to the Chernobyl Fund shelter and allocate additional 1 million euro in financial aid. We are also working closely with the Ministry of Economy and the government of Ukraine on development of the roadmap for outlining the cooperation in key economic sectors such as infrastructure and agriculture, as well as industrial projects, joint industrial projects. And we have also discussed yesterday with officials from the Ministry of Economy about potential recruitment and attraction of engineering and construction companies from Ukraine who have very sound experience in implementation of the infrastructure projects in the territory of Kazakhstan. So we look forward to continuing our close cooperation with the leadership and government of Ukraine in order to strengthen our ongoing economic and trade relations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you for support. Thank you. So we have literally like 8 minutes. So I would like to open to the floor, and please introduce yourself if you have questions. Welcome. Anyone? No. Okay. Then I will be asking questions. So how important is the international financial support? Should the country manage their reform on themselves, or how much should they rely on international support, and specifically from International Monetary Fund and World Bank, in your experience?
I think that very important are conditions which are in the country. It means when you haven't trust in government, when you haven't trust in your colleagues in business, when you haven't trust in law, when you haven't trust in condition of the state and administration, when there is corruption, when there is long-term and problematic legislative, it's a problem of investment, because investors want a stability and they want clear conditions and long-term conditions, long-term taxes. They want to know what will be in next year and 5, 10 years. It's the first. Second, it's only support. It isn't everything. It isn't social. It means you have to know what you want, and you can get the money for this your goal. It means the aim have to be now, how do you want to do reforms? And first thing is very important. You have to know what is strategy for your future. It means education, industry, agriculture. What do you want to do for 10, 20 years? And I think it's very important, because conditions and strategy, it's a first step to be successful.
Thank you. Clear plan and clear commitment. Colleagues, do you have... Welcome.
V zásade každá krajina je individuálna a neexistuje univerzálny liek.
In principle, every country is unique and there is no cure-all for everyone.
Vždy to musí byť nejaká kombinácia. Musí tam byť aktivity miestnych autorít a samozrejme oprieť sa aj o best practices a pomoc týchto nadnárodných inštitúcií.
It always has to be a combination of both. So good, capable, knowledgeable local experts in combination with best practices from abroad usually work the best.
My na Slovensku sme mali teraz nejaký návod, ktorý sme aplikovali ohľadne europomoci.
Recently in Slovakia, we had a manual of sorts which we've applied with regard to European structural funds.
To znamená, že sme urobili partnerskú dohodu s Európskou komisiou Slovensko,
So Slovakia has concluded a partnership agreement with the European Commission,
ktorá má svoju analytickú časť a tá partnerská dohoda poukazuje na problémy a chyby Slovenska, ktoré treba odstrániť a slabé miesta Slovenska, ktoré treba odstrániť.
and the partnership agreement includes an analytical portion which outlines the shortcomings and challenges of Slovakia, of Slovak system, economy and so forth, which shortcomings need to be removed.
A tiež svoju strategickú časť, to znamená, ako tie slabé miesta a problémy chceme odstrániť.
And then in turn, the partnership agreement also includes its strategic part, which outlines and provides for measures and specific steps how to overcome these obstacles.
Za koľko peňazí ich chceme odstrániť a odkiaľ tie peniaze zobrať.
And it also provides for budgets, how much money individual instruments are going to cost, and where the money is going to come from.
Je to naprieč celým spektrom aktivít štátu, od vzdelávania cez priemysel po dopravnú infraštruktúru a skrátka celé spektrum štátu je tam pomenované a takýto analytický materiál a následne strategický materiál s kombináciou vlastných aktivít a pomoci naozaj treba dôsledne spracovať. Ďakujem.
And this cuts across pretty much all areas of the economy, including ranging from education, industry as large, transport infrastructure, many other areas. And it's always been a combination of local expertise, a local know-how of the local conditions with the support and background from abroad, including financial support. So that's always a necessary ingredient to combine the two. Thank you.
Mr. President, talk about the Marshall Plan. So maybe you are preparing Poroshenko's plan, but the first of all is that money from everyone have to be investment. It means spent on wasting money. It can everyone. This money have to be investment, and it's a first of all, because when everyone is say or see yes, it's investment, it's a future, and I think it's very very important. And the second is you have to know that nobody can do for you what I promise you. It means you have to be very careful about what do you promise to other. To your own citizens and to international community. And I think the better is go step by step and do what is possible. It's very important.
Don't overpromise to anyone. Thank you, colleague. Thank you for your support one more time. Thank you for your time.